Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's the Saturday selection on GB News with Esther and Philip David. Coming up on the first hour of the show, we'll be speaking to Health Secretary Sajid Javid. We'll be live in Ukraine after President Biden said any direct conflict between Russia and NATO forces would lead to World War III. With the cost of living crisis really beginning to bite, why is the government insisting on stopping money-saving buy one free offers? And we'll be previewing the biggest week in the horse racing calendar with the help of champion trainer Paul Nicholls. But first, let's get the very latest news headlines.
Good morning, it's 10:01. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. US President Joe Biden has stressed that his country will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. In a tweet, he said the United States would defend every inch of NATO territory, but a direct confrontation would be World War III and must be prevented. Meanwhile, a further 130 US soldiers have deployed to Europe to assist NATO allies and help deter Russian aggression. The troops flew out of Fort Stewart in Georgia to join thousands of others in the region.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
Ukrainian authorities have released CCTV footage which they say shows Russian forces abducting the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. GB News cannot independently verify the video. However, it's reported he was kidnapped from the southeastern city, which has fallen under control of Vladimir Putin's forces. President Zelensky has accused Russia of violating international law. Russia has not commented on the video.
Today in Melitopol, the invaders captured the mayor of the city, a mayor who courageously defends Ukraine and the people of his community. Obviously, this is a sign of the weakness of the invaders. They did not find any support on our land, although they counted on it. Now, the Russian forces have switched to a new stage of terror when they are trying to physically eliminate representatives of the legitimate local Ukrainian authorities.
The UK's Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russian forces are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mariupol are encircled and suffering heavy Russian shelling. Just over 7,000 people were evacuated from 4 Ukrainian cities on Friday. That's down on the 2 previous days. President Zelensky has accused Russia of refusing to allow people out of Mariupol and says efforts will be made to deliver food and medicine there today. Well, here in the UK, new research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. Their analysis shows that gas and electricity bills are set to rise by 54% when the price cap changes in April, but average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. A government spokesperson said it recognised the strain families were under and has unveiled a £21 billion package of support. OK, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Saturday Selection.
This is the Saturday selection here on GB News. I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis. Coming up, we'll be going through the week's top stories when Dia Chakravarti of the Daily Telegraph joins us in the studio.
But first, we've all seen by now the terrible pictures coming out of Ukraine this week of a maternity hospital shelled by Russian forces. It highlights more than ever the need for humanitarian help in a country being torn apart by war. Our first guest today is the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. Thanks for joining us. And firstly, what medical help are we offering Ukraine?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. We've been working very hard with our Ukrainian friends ever since the start of the conflict on humanitarian aid. So far, in terms of medical support, we've sent out 6 flights from the UK full of medical supplies and equipment and vital medicines and wound packages. We're coordinating also with our European friends to make sure that together we can provide everything that is needed. And of course, we will continue to do so over the coming 2 weeks or so. We would expect to send out many, many more flights.
Sajid, thanks for that. I'm sure people will be pleased to know what the government's doing to help. Can I just move you on to the subject of COVID? Obviously, thankfully, the government have relaxed all of the conditions. Better late than never as far as people like me are concerned, but it's very welcome nevertheless. I just wondered, from your perspective, how you felt that was going. And also, given what's happened, do you think that if another pandemic struck, the government would be less likely to go for full-blown lockdowns and instead more focus on shielding the people who are most vulnerable and let people manage their own risk?
Yes, I do, Philip. And I think it's fair to say that we have collectively learned a lot through this pandemic. Of course, the pandemic itself is across the world. It's still raging. It's not over. So we need to remain on our guard. But as a country now, we are the most open country in Europe. People are getting on with their lives and like normal. And that's great to see. And in every respect, both socially and economically and in every other way. And we can do this because I think as a government, if we look back at recent decisions regarding the pandemic, we've made the right decisions. We were right to open up in the summer. Many countries did not do that. And we were right to focus on vaccines and antivirals and other treatments and also testing during the Omicron wave. And of course, as I said, we've got to remain vigilant. So we've got to have good surveillance. We've got to keep encouraging people to come forward for their vaccines if they haven't done so yet, because that protects not just them, but all of us. But we are in a very good position.
One thing that I've noticed, and I wondered if you'd comment on this, is that quite a few parts of the public sector appear to be bringing back in or not even getting rid of some of these COVID restrictions by the back door. So, for example, if you go to a court, the court will say, everybody there must wear a mask, even though the government guidance has been changed for the rest of the country. Is there any way that you can make sure that the public sector follow the government's lead and also what the government's now saying to the rest of the country?
Well, I can certainly speak for my part of the public sector, which is very large, obviously the health and social care sectors. So already we have removed in social care all the sort of restrictions that did exist before on visiting rights and other types of restrictions. Of course, we still want to make sure that there's testing available in social care. Older people in residential homes in particular are more vulnerable. In hospitals, there are certain tests either of staff and individuals we would do because people there are, again, more vulnerable. But a lot of the rules and regulations around this are either have been removed or gradually being removed. And it's good to see. I think we all want to see a return to normal. I know for if I think about my youngest daughter at school, she's really pleased that she doesn't have to wear a mask anymore like she did just a few weeks ago. And I think it's really important that throughout society that we start returning completely back to normal.
Sajid, the health budget has grown considerably over the last 10 years and it's now bigger than the GDP of Greece. Is it going to continue to grow?
Well, that's that figure that you just, or that the way that you explained it, there, GDP of Greece bigger than that. That's something I put out there this week, deliberately so, because I made a speech earlier this week where I set out this the huge cost of our health service, and this was growing even before the pandemic, because thankfully we're all living longer, but that means more pressure and challenges for the NHS. There's lots of new treatments, and we all want to have the very best from the NHS, rightly so, and that puts pressure. So a direct answer to your question, if we look ahead for the next few years, there are planned increases in the NHS budget, and that is necessary to deal with the challenges certainly that the pandemic has left behind. You'll know, Esther, that the waiting list for electives is at 6 million. It will go higher before it falls because of the demand that is coming back of those people that stayed away. And it is right that we focus whatever we can on that. But it is also right that we together as a society understand that we can't keep having a health budget that keeps growing at double the rate of economic growth. That kind of growth is not sustainable for the long term. But we can deal with this in a very sensible way. And that's why focusing much more on prevention, much more on personalising medicine and much more joined up, and also on performance of the NHS. For example, things like making the most of digital and data.
Sajid Javid, I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, and also a big thank you for stopping the mandatory vaccination requirements for NH staff and care workers as well. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Right, it's time to take a closer look at the week's top stories with the help of the Daily Telegraph's Brexit editor, Dia Chakravarti. Dia, thanks for joining us. And can you tell us what you've seen in the papers this week?
Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. There are a couple of stories that sort of particularly caught my eye this week. One of the stories was about, it is to do with the Ukraine war, but more to do with its implications on the UK and also our neighbouring parts of Europe. And energy independence or self-sufficiency in energy has become very much a sort of a topic of conversation again, as we anticipate a rise in energy bills and perhaps even not having access to enough energy to heat or heat our homes or cook in our homes. So with that in mind, the story that caught my attention was the news that Boris Johnson is being urged to speak to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to diversify so that we can get more energy from Saudi Arabia than we was, so that the entire dependency that Europe has, more or less, really, we're not so dependent on Russia, but a lot of European countries are. That dependency can be moved away solely from Russia and diversified, and we can get more energy from other countries. Now, we have a relationship with Saudi Arabia. We do deal with them on many issues, and it is a relationship that will probably be nurtured. But it just seemed to me a little bit strange that we were trying to look at one dictatorship to another to make sure that our lights aren't turned off and our energy supply is not cut off. And I just feel that the very important point about becoming as self-sufficient as we possibly can by, be it through renewables, be it through, exploiting our North Sea oil resources, or even looking at fracking again, I just feel that debate is missing, and we are just looking possibly at the wrong place rather than focusing a lot more attention on what we can do within our own shores.
Deirdre, I guess it's the speed of which you've got to get that oil and that gas to the country. They have got spare capacity of something like 1.5 to 2 million barrels a day. So you can see that Boris Johnson's straight over there. And it seems that Boris is front of the queue there, whereas Biden is back of the queue. Very poor relationship there between America and Saudi Arabia.
That's right. So the news, you're absolutely right, Esther. So, what I remember reading is that President Biden's been trying to speak to MBS, as he's known, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and has actually not been able to get through. Whereas Boris Johnson is known to have some sort of a relationship.
A WhatsApp relationship.
A WhatsApp relationship, yeah, exactly. So we're sort of looking to exploit that. But you raise a very good point, Esther, about the speed of it. You're absolutely right. If we start fracking tomorrow, for example, we're not going to get what we need. You're absolutely right. So we do actually have to look at other places. But this is where I'd quite like to give a shout out to our friend here, Philip Davis, who in 2008, when the Climate Change Act was being looked at, there were only 5 Conservative MPs, one of whom was our friend Philip here, who actually raised the issue of what are we going to, what is going to be the impact of this act on supply and price of energy in this country. Nobody seemed interested at that point. So if back in 2008 we had given some attention to what is going to happen in the future, we might have found ourselves in a different position now.
Nobody listens to me, not least in our house. But it's nice
I do. I can't help but listen to him.
Nice of you to say that I'm ahead of my time. That's what I'm going to take from what you've just said there. Esther, you had some sad news really this week, didn't you?
Yes, I want to bring this story up. It was in the Times on the obituary pages this week. It was a lady called Lee Everett, born 14th of February 1937, and she died on the 24th of February 2020, aged 85. There she is there, her current husband, or her husband, John Alkin, there, kissing her, and a former husband, Kenny Everett, also kissing her here. But this is a woman who was so ahead of her times. She was fearless, and I will also say she was full of spirit, and I mean that the positive way. She didn't drink at all, but she was full of life and spirit. She was a campaigner for gay rights, for women's rights, for animal rights, and she also was really at the forefront of mindfulness. People now talk about the mental health issues of young people, of all people really, but she always did this. Know your own truth, know your own mind, and follow the purpose you were put on this planet to do, because frequently that's why people lose the way, is because they're not full of mindfulness. And so I wanted to bring her to the fore, but she was frequently in the newspaper, she was frequently in the media, because of her glitterati friends, because of who she was her boyfriend, because who she married. She was a boyfriend. Billy Fury was her boyfriend, but then she married for 10 years Kenny Everett. Now, I love Kenny Everett, absolutely hilarious. Lots of people have said Kenny Everett would not have been the person he was without Lee. She helped him in many, many ways with mindfulness, and obviously later in life for being who he truly needs to be, and that was to be a gay man. So I'm delighted that I knew her for over 20 years. I'm delighted that the Times did a 2-page obituary of her, and all I can say, her life was done, as Kenny Everett would say it, in the best possible taste.
Now, I mean, the thing about Kenny...
I was hoping we were going to see a little bit of Kenny doing in the best possible taste rather than me doing it.
The thing, though, I mean, Esther knew Lee well, which is the bit she did say. And the thing that I love is that you remember when Kenny Everett spoke at the Conservative Party rally before the election, he had these big hands, and he was doing the Conservative Party rally, and he said to Lee afterwards, he said, "Do you know what, Lee? I was really tempted to come out at that when I was speaking. I was going to come out." And Lee said to him, "Kenny, you did. You came out as a Tory." I thought which was very irreverent at the time. And the other thing people don't know, most of those TV shows were actually filmed in their house and garage, because he sometimes just didn't have, I don't know if he didn't want to go into the TV studios, so they'd film them in the house, and then she'd race down to deliver the reels. Yeah, incredible. My reminiscence of the week was about Lord Tebbit, dear, one of my heroes who was stood down from the House of Lords. And after 52 years in Parliament, he got elected to Parliament in 1970, left the House of Commons in 92, went to the House of Lords. Norman Tebbit was one of my political heroes, along with Mrs Thatcher. It's a very sad day. When I set up the Better Off Out campaign in 2006 to say we should leave the EU, Lord Tebbit was one of the first people to join us, forthright as ever. And, I think we all remember his speech at the Conservative conference about his get on your bike speech, when he said, when my dad was unemployed after the war, he didn't riot. He got on his bike to look for work and kept on looking till he found a job. So it's very sad. Lord Lawson was also 90 yesterday, so it's reminiscing back to the Thatcher days. I think, am I not right in saying, Esther, that didn't Quentin Letts once describe you as the love child of Norman Tebbit and Cilla Black? Is that?
You know what? I'd forgotten that, deliberately so. But glad that you've reminded me of this. Yes.
Was Lord Tebbit one of your heroes, dear?
He was. What I remember in my sort of communication with him is he was just so impeccably polite. So when I was absolutely very young and sort of very nervous about approaching MPs and Lords, he was just so accessible. And every time you wrote to him with anything, he always sent you a handwritten letter back, which is incredible. You just get this letter and say, "Thank you very much for taking the time to draw my attention to this issue. Here are my thoughts." And I just thought that was so. It was just such a nice thing to do for a lot of politicians, not you two, but a lot of politicians. They only have time for important people, and often not for sort of youngsters trying to write to them for whatever reason. And this was an exception, which I've always noted, and it was just a very nice memory, really. I've got a stack of letters.
I think we should say as well that his dedication to looking after his wife after she was injured in the Brighton bomb. He probably gave up the chance of being Prime Minister in order to care for his wife, and probably in my view, the best Prime Minister we never had in this country. But it's very sad that he's no longer going to be in Parliament.
Well, I love the fact he was a pilot, and he said, at the time when he was a pilot, you had to do spherical trigonometry. That's how demanding it was, sort of mathematically. And I think that quick brain absolutely helped him in his time in Parliament. What else have you seen in the papers, dear?
So is this yet time for the sort of the slightly light-hearted story where I was still talking about serious stuff? So I don't know how light-hearted this really is, but you two not being Londoners and me being Bangladeshi, so slightly further away from London than you grew up, I was just thinking, so Sadiq Khan's latest campaign seems to be a well-intended one of combating sexual harassment on the tube. And as a woman who uses the tube a lot, of course there's a very important need for that. But one of the things that is listed there as potentially sexual harassment is intensive staring. Now, as Northerners, do you find, I just wanted to ask you, do you already find London a little bit, you can't even smile at people. So I really like smiling at people. I make eye contact with anybody. I like to give them a smile. And sometimes in London, on the tube, they look at you as if you're some kind of a freak and that you've kind of come into their space just by smiling. I don't know how you two feel about this and how you think staring would be policed if that slightly became criminal behaviour.
Well, I don't understand. I mean, how do you give evidence in court about that? About how this person was...
Well, usually I find everybody averts your gaze. Absolutely, yeah. Everybody quickly looks down to a book. No, I think smile. It's free. You can give somebody, I don't know, just a boost. A smile is a positive thing. So I'd say we need that human engagement. So I'd say, what a load of rubbish. And just a positive smile. Obviously not a shifty sort of staring out, violent stare, but just a smile.
But we like to think we're much friendlier up north. We like to think so. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But we certainly like to think that we're much friendlier up north.
What's your views on that, GB viewers?
Yes, exactly. Tell us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Are we more friendly up north? So, Dia, thank you very much indeed. Now, coming up, is it time to rethink the ban on fracking in the wake of the Ukraine crisis? Stay with us.
Hello. Rather changeable weather across the UK through this coming weekend, with showers or longer spells of rain. There will be some sunshine in between, but it will often be windy, particularly on Saturday night into Sunday. Now, many of us saw some heavy, persistent rain on Friday, and that was thanks to this cold front that pushed its way northwards, with some fairly strong winds across the UK as well, shown by the tightly packed isobars. But that rain, as I said, continued to clear its way northwards, so clearing the far north of Scotland through the night, clearing eastern England as well. And behind it, a lot of cloud around with some further showery outbreaks of rain. Some of that rain, again, could be on the heavy side, but with some dry spells in between. Winds won't be as strong as they were on Friday, so that could lead to one or two fog patches for Northern Ireland. Here it'll be quite chilly, but generally another mild night to come, temperatures holding well above freezing. So we're going to have a rather cloudy, disappointing start to the weekend then, with a lot of cloud and showery outbreaks of rain to start the day. All that rain will push its way northwards, and as it does, it should brighten up across much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales. So it's more in the way of sunshine for a time, just a few showers, which again could be locally heavy. Winds won't be as strong as they were on Friday. Friday, so we could see highs of 12 or 13 degrees, and in that sunshine it will feel quite warm, 9 or 10 degrees though across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But in the southwest, as we head into the afternoon, winds already starting to strengthen. We could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour across parts of the southwest, with a warning in force for that. And with that wind, heavy rain as well that will extend its way northwards and eastwards as we head through the night. So by the early hours of the morning, quite a wet picture across much of the UK, and those strong winds extending across many western coastal parts in particular, where we could see gusts in places of 50 to 60 miles an hour and turning windier elsewhere. With all the cloud and rain around, it won't be cold anywhere. Temperatures again on the mild side. So we get up to a rather wet start across this central slice of the UK on Sunday morning. Some rain to start the day, some brightness either side, and then a rash of showers spreading in across many western parts through the day. And again, these could be heavy. But it's the strength of the wind once again we need to focus on, with further warnings in force throughout the day. Slowly settling down into the early part of next week with more sunshine and temperatures lifting as well.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
With petrol prices at record highs and domestic gas and electricity bills set to rise next month, the need for cheap, reliable energy is greater than ever.
The Prime Minister hinted this week the ban on fracking in the UK could be lifted in order to help limit the impact of current global uncertainty on fuel prices.
But were there good reasons for the fracking ban in the first place? Has anything changed? And are renewable options such as onshore wind farms a better bet?
Let's get thoughts of Dr. Benny Peisner, climate policy expert and director at Net Zero Watch. Benny, thanks for coming on. In the current geopolitical climate, is a review of the UK's ban on fracking a sensible move?
Absolutely. Good morning, Esther. Absolutely. If you compare the gas prices in Europe, where fracking is basically banned, to the US, where they are getting a lot of shale gas out of the ground, we're paying roughly between 10 and 15 times higher gas prices than in the US. So clearly, if you have plenty of shale gas, prices will come down quite dramatically. The question is, how much is there? We don't know exactly, but we need to find out. And it's just ridiculous that we can't even try.
Benny, obviously in the past, the focus on energy policy over the last few years has all been about making it greener. Now it seems to me there's an opportunity for that debate to change to being about security and about the cost of it. has the issue with gas and oil and all of this and the prices that have gone up, has, in a funny kind of way, has that made the case for renewable energy? Because some people would say, well, look, you know, that gives us security and also it's cheaper.
Yeah, well, most people don't understand the energy system, and they don't understand that as we increase the amount of renewables, we increase the amount of gas that is needed to back up the renewables. So if you compare what the energy mix was 30 years ago, 70% of energy, electricity generated was coal. There was hardly any gas, and 20% was nuclear. And today, coal has been almost entirely replaced by renewables and gas, because the more renewables have come on, the more gas was necessary to back up the renewables. So this idea that we increase the percentage of renewables, that would replace gas, is really naive, because how are we going to heat our homes and power our country if there is no wind and solar? So we need these backup power plants, and that requires a lot of gas, and the gas price goes up. So it's really naive and not workable. We need a bigger mix. We need more alternative forms of energy supply, and that certainly means we need more shale gas. And possibly, if we can no longer afford to heat our homes or power our country, we might have to go back to coal, as Germany and Italy are now doing. There is the potential. I mean, think about it. The latest estimate are that our energy bills will quadruple. So in other words, they will be 4 times as expensive than a year ago. Most families won't be able to afford that. Most energy suppliers will go bankrupt.
Benny, I get the point about shale energy. It's something I've argued for quite a bit over a long period of time. But obviously, when it was sort of explored for the first time, it met a lot of local resistance in the areas where it was going to be brought up. People there said that they were experiencing mini earthquakes and things. So, I mean, are these concerns legitimate? And with the level of public opposition in those places where shale is it ever likely to happen?
Well, look, these tremors have been totally exaggerated. They're so minute that you really, it's a bit like a van driving past your house. It's that kind of, it's not an earthquake, it's a minor tremor. And wherever you have geological activity, wherever you have geothermal or, drilling into the earth, you have these tremors. That is inevitable. So the people of Blackpool and in the Northwest, they have to decide, do they prefer energy bills going through the roof, or do they prefer to have energy security and affordable energy? You have to weigh up, and you want the jobs that come with it. And you want to make sure that your homes are warm. You have to weigh up the pros and the cons. And in my opinion, there are more benefits. After all, the Industrial Revolution was based on coal, and, coal mining was part of, British history for 100-200 years. And we accepted that. And the British public accepted that because it meant that we had, better life, quality of life, and everything, we have today is based on cheap energy.
And Benny, I did a couple of surveys. One was on what did the public want? Was it security, affordability, reliability, or green energy? And actually it came through significantly so that it was security and affordability right at the top, then reliability, and then green energy at the bottom. Not saying that we didn't want a path to being green, it just was at the right time. And the second survey I did was, is now the time to do shale? And 84% of those who voted said, yes, it is the time now to do shale. So my question to you, if you can give us a quick response, the new supply strategy from Boris will be coming forward in a few days. What would you like to see on it?
Everything that can be done has to be done. he cannot leave out options that would ease the pain. So any strategy that isn't comprehensive and uses all the tools that he has will come back to bite him, because he will be blamed for an utter energy disaster that we're facing in the next 12 months. As I said, the estimates are that we might not only see a trebling of costs, but a quadrupling of costs, up to £4,000 per year per household on average. As I said, most families are unable to afford that. So unless he comes up with a plan that includes every possible option, it won't be credible, it won't work, and he will be punished.
Dr. Benny Pizer, Director of Net Zero Watch, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
And we want to hear your views as well. Do email us in. What do you think about shale? Is that the way forward? Now, it's day 17 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the severe shelling of several cities continued overnight.
Let's speak to Yulia Mendel, Ukrainian journalist and former spokesperson for President Zelensky, in a moment, who's in Kiev. We'll be speaking to her in a second. Obviously, what's been happening in Ukraine has been devastating for everybody to watch, isn't it? And the bravery of people is just mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're going to speak to Yulia, who was the former spokesperson for President Zelensky. And we need to know, first of all, because obviously it's difficult connecting out there at the moment, are you safe and well, Yulia? Safe and well, Yulia.
Hi, thank you for having me. Actually, I am relatively safe, but of course we have air alerts and we live in different conditions right now when almost nothing works and people went to territorial defense units. We have checkpoints, we have a lot of guns, and all Ukraine is united just to win this war. So I'm relatively safe, but every day I'm trying to get in touch with my parents who are stuck in the occupied territory. And to be frank, this is something that makes me cry every day, because the situation is very sorrowful, and when I see what's going on around my country, I feel really very bad. We need to live with the hope that we will win, but this is very sorrowful that in 21st century, a country with such a large army can just come to the territory of different countries, start invasions and all these attacks that so much look like a terrorist attack.
Yulia, we salute and admire your courage and the courage of your fellow Ukrainians and wish you all the best. You were former spokesperson for President Zelensky. He's by far and away the most popular politician in the world right now. Have you been surprised with the level of courage and dignity and determination that he's shown, or were those qualities something that you always saw in him?
This is a very good question, in fact. The war actually provided this opportunity for people to see the type of character which is Volodymyr Zelensky is. In fact, he was known very simply as a comedian who became a president of the country, but he has a legal background. He is a lawyer by his high education, and he is definitely a very good business manager because he's built here a humor empire. So what I must say is that there is the rise of respect towards the president all over the country, because he definitely didn't leave people when there was this kind of suggestion of evacuation when Russians entered Kiev. He said, let me remind, I don't need a ride, I need weapons, right? The fact is, I was working with him for 2 years.
And
type of behavior and attitude towards risk. Yes, and I saw his type of behavior towards risk all the time. In fact, it's not even about bravery, but he definitely thinks that his leadership of the country is much more important than risk, instinctive self-preservation and any risk that could happen. We were traveling to Donbas zone, partially occupied by Russia 8 years ago, and he never was afraid to go go to the parts of shelling. He never was afraid to go to the front lines to show the solidarity with the soldiers who were defending Ukraine. And that was the part of his obligation that he felt as the president. So when there was this really kind suggestion offer to evacuate the president from Kyiv, I knew already it was impossible, even when he kindly declined it. So up to now, President is showing really the leadership that Ukraine needs, because he has united Ukrainians to defend our country, and he has united the whole civilized world around Ukraine, because we understand that we are standing here not just for the territory of post-Soviet space, we are standing here for our independence and for the values of democracy that the world actually established after the World War II.
Yulia, can I just ask you finally, quickly, how do Ukrainians perceive the support that you've received from the United Kingdom? Do you think that the UK have done enough to support you?
United Kingdom is actually valued here very much, because United Kingdom appeared to be one of the most reliable partners. What is seen here in Ukraine. First of all, let's be frank, United Kingdom was the first country to provide weaponry to Ukraine when we saw that the invasion was already in the place. Also, Boris Johnson was among all these big leaders, I mean the world leaders who arrived to Ukraine just in few days before invasion started. And that was the first prime minister to come to Ukraine in 16 years. And furthermore, we understand that the United Kingdom is that kind of the state that will not manipulate or doubt, or try to find any kind of bureaucratic mask to figure out different solution. We know that the United Kingdom has the same enemy as us, and we know that definitely United Kingdom is aware of Russian threat very much. So we highly appreciate everything that has been done by the people of the United Kingdom, because it's not only about the politicians. And we understand that if there are any reliable partners, there will be London definitely among them. So very much grateful from Ukrainians for standing with us shoulder to shoulder together against this brutal invasion of Ukraine.
Yulia, Mendel, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning from Ukraine. Coming up, we look forward to Philip's favourite week of the year. That's the Cheltenham Festival.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. We've got some of your views here. Philip?
Sam says on shale, it's a no-brainer. We should use our own shale gas.
And Dave Jones on fracking. Would UK frack gas be price linked to world wholesale gas prices? If so, there is no advantage to us except for creating an industry and jobs. So, Dave, Sam, thank you. And other people keep sending your views in.
Now, the war in Ukraine isn't just having an effect on fuel prices. Russia and Ukraine are two of the world's biggest producers of wheat, and there are major concerns that the war will have a huge impact on this year's crop.
And Russian sanctions will hit food producers with the cost of relating products such as fertilisers set to soar.
So with the bill for our weekly shop going up, is now the time for the government to rethink a ban on buy one, get one free deals, which is due to come in later in the year.
MP Greg Smith has been very vocal on this topic and joins us now. Greg, whilst I often want to tell Philip Davis here to BOGOF, when we're in the supermarket, this is a serious subject for our shoppers, isn't it? And you're highlighting that.
Absolutely. Good morning. The government have got these crazy new regulations in a bill going through Parliament, as you guys well know, at the moment, that would seek to tell shopkeepers where they can and can't put a chocolate orange on the shelves, that they can't put on buy one, get one free offers on foods that the government has decided are bad for us. And first and foremost, that's just not a conservative approach. We need to trust people to buy what they want for themselves and their families. But secondly, as you've just said, with food prices going up, with fuel prices going up, energy prices going up, it's just not a fair thing to be doing right now to take those options away from families doing the weekly shop.
Greg, I mean, I hate this kind of nanny state stuff. What chances do you think there are of a government U-turn on this? I know that you're organising a letter from colleagues to the Prime Minister to try and urge him to change his mind. What sense do you get of the chances of the government making a change here?
I think we've got to hope that the chances are very good at the moment, even if it's just through the lens of rising food prices. I've spoken to the Prime Minister about this, as well as the Health Secretary, the Culture Secretary, because remember, this has a big impact on broadcasters and advertising as well. And I think there is an appetite to do something a little bit more sensible. Nobody's disputing that obesity in the United Kingdom is a problem, but the way you solve that isn't by nannying, isn't by telling people what they should and shouldn't do, but by enabling people to make educated, informed choices for themselves, what's right for them, what's right for their children, what's right for their families. And hopefully we can win this argument at this late hour as the legislation goes to the House of Lords and convince the government that we've got to think again.
Now, on a totally separate subject, it'd be remiss of me not to ask, before you head off, you're the MP for Buckingham. Now, before you was a very famous MP there. He's stolen all the headlines all week. That's the former Speaker, John Bercow. We've read what the papers have to say, but what do his constituents have to say about John Bercow?
So there are a huge number of my constituents who remember him as a good constituency member of Parliament, but then felt very let down when he politicised the Speaker's chair so much, particularly around Brexit. It's been a very sad week to see the reports of the 21 counts of bullying that he was found guilty of by the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. And I think what I want to do is move forward so that, do my best for my constituents in Buckingham. John is gone. He represented the seat for 22 years. He's not there now. He moved out years ago, in fact, and do what I can to ensure that I can be the best Member of Parliament possible for my constituents.
Greg Smith, MP for Buckingham, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Much appreciated. Now, let's stay with this subject and speak to Chris Noyce of the Association of Convenience Stores. Chris, how will these new regulations affect your members and your members' customers?
Well, the core of the regulations you talked about, the removing of multi-buys and extra free offers, so buy one, get one free and 3 for 2, those kind of things. They'll have a significant impact. Lots of retailers rely on promotions and, more importantly, lots of customers rely on promotions. We did some work with consumers asking what the impact would be And the majority of people that are likely to have young children, so under 50s, are saying that this will make it harder to, one, feed their family, and two, harder to treat their family on special occasions. So there's a significant impact there. But the second part of these regulations is about the location that you can put these products in. And there are lots of products that are affected, everything from sweets and crisps, as you might expect, but through to juices, yogurts, cereals, pastries, all these kind of things that are going to have to be moved around a store as part of these very complex and very difficult to implement regulations.
I mean, you know, how is it going down with the shopkeepers, these regulations? Do they think, what a load of old rubbish?
Well, what they're thinking at the moment is we don't know the detail of what we're supposed to be doing. So it's 7 months now until this comes into force. Stores are having to spend thousands of pounds on planning, changing their stores fundamentally. There's lots of stores affected. And yeah, it's a significant impact. And I think the biggest concern is that this is going to happen. It's not going to have the desired effect. It probably won't change that much behaviour. And then the government will be looking at the next thing down the line. So yeah, real concern from our members about not just this, you know, costing a lot of money and potentially not being that impactful, but then, you know, what's next after that as well.
You say, Chris, that it's going to cost the shopkeepers, these small businesses, a lot of money. Yes, it is thousands and thousands of pounds to sort of reconfigure their shops, but that money will have to be passed on to customers because you're going to have to get the money from somewhere. So if ever there was a ridiculous time, well, I'd never want to impose these restrictions, but if ever there was a poor time to do it, it's now. You're getting rid of free offers. So why shouldn't somebody get maybe two pizzas, one for free, put it in the freezer and then have it next week? You're in a cost of living crisis, and yet you're putting the prices up, stopping promotions and not allowing for somebody to get some food for free. It is lunacy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think retailers are just in the same position as consumers in that everything's going up. Cost of energy is going up, cost of employment's going up. So when you get a cost of £13,000, £15,000 for a single store, £90 million for the whole sector, that can't just be absorbed. That's going to have to be reflected in increased prices. You then can't make promotions on those products as well, so that increases the price further and risks alienating a lot of customers. And we operate in a lot of difficult and vulnerable neighbourhoods. And those customers, in many cases, they're shopping specifically just because they're looking for deals, looking for things that they can afford. And this is going to make that much more difficult.
Chris, I mean, I can't believe that we're getting to the point where the government are telling people what shelves you can put which products on. I mean, it's going to be a joy for every pettifogging official around the country, isn't it, getting the tape measure out to make sure that you've got the right distance from the checkouts and everything. Just following on from Esther's point, I just wondered, can you quantify at all how much all of these restrictions added together, the location restrictions and the promotions restrictions, how much they're likely to cost consumers and how much they're likely to cost your members to implement?
Well, it's a bit of an unknown because we're in the midst of costs going up elsewhere in the business. If it was just that on its own, I would expect some retailers to be able to absorb it. But because we've got energy prices going up, because we've got the threat of business rates coming back in, because we've got employment costs going up, national insurance rises and those kinds of things as well, because we've got wholesalers putting charges on deliveries, retailers are facing increased costs everywhere. So this probably can't be absorbed. It's probably going to get worse before October. So I wouldn't want to put a specific figure on it. But yeah, certainly the costs will be looking to be passed on in some way to consumers. And retailers don't want to do that. That is always a last resort. And just picking up, Philip, on your other point about, yes, enforcement officers going around with tape measures in stores, that is a very real possibility, going in, measuring how far away from the checkout, how far away from the entrance your cereal and your yogurts are. And that is a pretty big waste of time and resource for government to be spending when they could be spending on other things like tackling the illicit trade, getting dodgy alcohol and tobacco off the shelves, which is something we would support much more than, as you say, people going out with tape measures.
Chris Noyes from the Association of Convenience Stores, thank you so much for joining us, and we'd love to hear your views on this. Whether you want to see the back of buy one, get one free offers, let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, for many people, including me, I have to say, the Cheltenham Festival is the biggest sporting event of the year. More than 250,000 people are expected to make the pilgrimage there next week, after last year's festival was held behind closed doors due to the pandemic.
Phil likes to think he's an expert when it comes to racing, but let's speak to a couple of real experts, a respected racing journalist and broadcaster, Cornelius Lysett. Cornelius, what makes Cheltenham so special? Loving the hat, by the way.
Oh, well, welcome to Hereford Racecourse, where we've got the pre-Cheltenham fixture, the Irish fixture here this afternoon in the sunshine. What makes Cheltenham so special? Well, it is, as far as horse racing is concerned, jump racing anyway, it is the week of the year, 4 days of horse racing, Tuesday through Friday, culminating in the Cheltenham Gold Cup itself. And it's a horrible cliche, and it's the only time I'm going to use this expression in the next few days. It's the Olympics of jump racing, but it is really, it comes around every year. It's the championship. The main horses from Britain, the main horses from Ireland compete over 28 races. And as well as all the action, it's a proper festival. So people descend on this tiny picturesque corner of Gloucestershire, where Cheltenham is located, to enjoy themselves and enjoy a festival, if you like, as well as all the action out on the track.
Now, Cornelius, you mentioned that it was about the best from Britain taking on the best from Ireland. Last year was an absolute bloodbath in that competition. Out of the 28 races at the Cheltenham Festival, Ireland won 23 and British trainers and horses won just 5. Are we in for a similar bloodbath this week, or might the British fight back?
Well, I'm pleased your arithmetic is so good, but it's rather depressingly good. You're absolutely right. It was a rout, 23-5 in 2021. Irish jump racing is in particularly good health at the moment, with trainers like Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Henry de Bromhead, who are all in prolific form. They are bringing an enormous number of horses across, and not only is Irish racing in such good health, but British racing in terms of talent isn't in quite such good health. The likelihood is that the numbers will still be considerable for Ireland. I think the feeling is that Britain might get to 8 or 9, but that still means 20 or 21 or 19 or 20 to Ireland. So Ireland are going to be very strong. They're particularly strong in the champion hurdle, an unbeaten horse called Honeysuckle, in the Ryanair chase, horse called Allaho, and in the Cheltenham Gold Cup on Friday, with a whole lot of very good chances, including last year's winner Minella Indo and last year's runner-up Ablutar and Galvin. So the Irish looking very strong, not just in the big races, but in some of the races that might be described as the undercard as well.
Now, as Esther pointed out, I'm an enthusiast. You're an expert, Cornelius. So what our viewers and listeners want to know is what they should be putting their hard-earned money on next week to try and win a few quid. With the cost of living crisis, that's more important than ever. So come on, let's nail your colours to the mast. If our viewers and listeners had to have one bet next week, what should it be?
Well, I have to tell you, viewers, Philip's being extremely modest there, because he is renowned for his shrewdness when it comes to finding the winner of the 245, whether it's at Cheltenham or indeed at Carlisle. But no, if you're looking for the big stories I've mentioned already, like Honeysuckle and Allaho and the Irish in the Gold Cup, a lot of hope behind a British horse, Shishkin, trained by Nicky Henderson in the Queen Mother Champion Chase, but a couple of big Irish contenders, Anugamen and Chacon Poursois, up against that particular horse. And what is worrying fans of Shishkin and indeed other horses trained by Nicky Henderson, one of the champion trainers in Britain, is that his horses have been out of form over the last 3 weeks. He's got, I think it's 4 runners this afternoon at Hereford and at Sandown. So his supporters will be looking for an upturn in fortunes on that. And it is a Henderson horse that I will recommend. I will know my fate very early on in the fixture, in the first of the 28 races, because Team Henderson has a very good horse indeed called Constitution Hill. And Constitution Hill was taken to Kempton Park Racecourse for a gallop the other day against a champion hurdle contender called Epatante, also trained by Nicky Henderson, and Constitution Hill came out of that gallop miles on top. Is a horse with an outstanding chance in the opening race of the fixture, which is the Sky Bet Supreme Novices Hurdle Race. And the great thing about that race is there's been no Cheltenham normally for 12 months. So there's a great roar goes up. They're under starters' orders. They're off for the first race. This roar goes up. It'll be an even bigger roar in 2022 because, as you pointed out earlier on, the fixture took place in 2021 behind closed doors.
We're going to have a roar here as well, Cornelius. Your friend is about to join us here. That's Paul Nicholls, champion national hunt trainer. Not once, but 12 times, maybe even 13 times. So, hello, Paul. I know you're in the deepest, darkest countryside, but we have got you. We're talking about Cheltenham and your training capabilities and what's happening.
What we want to know, Paul, is which one of your horses should we be betting on next week? That's what. Let's cut to the quick. That's what our viewers and listeners want to know. What's the Paul Nicholls winner next week?
Well, the best three chances I've got, I think, are Brave Man's Game, Stage Star, and a horse on Friday called Bob and Co. But you know, so competitive there. How do you know which one to bet? You know, you nearly got to take your chance on what you know yourself. Really, we obviously think Brave Man's Game's got a great chance on Wednesday.
And I want to know, Paul, having trained so many winners, having been champion jockey so many times, what's the best celebration you've ever had? What's the best party you've had at the end of a race or a year?
Well, I think every time the Coulter or Denman won the Gold Cup sort of 10 or 12 years ago, we ended up in our local pub, the Manor Inn, and had a right celebration. So we never short celebrating when you win those sort of races.
I think you've had 46 Cheltenham winners, Paul, including 4 Cheltenham Gold Cups. You've trained some of the greats: Corto Star, Denman, Big Bucks. Which winner at Cheltenham gives you the most satisfaction when you look back on them?
Well, I think winning any Gold Cup is amazing, and we were lucky in, I think, 2007, 8 and 9, we won it 3 times. I think the year Corto won the second time, when he was the first horse to win, lose, and then regain the Gold Cup. I think when he won it for the second time in 2009, when he beat Denman that day, that was, a fantastic day. But all those Gold Cups are amazing memories.
Paul, Cornelius, thank you so much for joining us. Paul, we wish you every success next week. We know how difficult it is to train a winner at Cheltenham, so training 46 is a great achievement. We wish you all the very best. And Cornelius, enjoy it. And if your tips don't win, you'll need to be further away than Hereford when Esther's after you. I can tell you, if Constitution Hill doesn't win, you'll be on the run from Esther.
Coming up, we'll be on the Poland-Ukrainian border with GBNews presenter Isabel Oakeshott as the refugee crisis deepens by the day. Don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. This is the Saturday selection on GB News with Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis. Coming up in the second hour of the show, we'll be live on the Poland-Ukraine border as the number of people looking to flee the Russian invasion rises to nearly 3 million. What can the government do to ease the cost of living crisis? We'll be speaking to our resident financial expert, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, and we have all the usual Saturday sport and showbiz as well. All of that coming up after the latest news headlines.
Good morning, it's 3 minutes past 11. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. US President Joe Biden has stressed that his country will not fight a war against Russia and Ukraine, as it would be World War III. In a tweet, he said the United States would defend every inch of NATO territory, but a direct confrontation must be prevented. Meanwhile, a further 130 US soldiers have deployed to Europe to assist NATO allies and help to deter Russian aggression. The troops flew out of Fort Stewart in Georgia to join thousands of others in the region.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
President Biden. Ukrainian authorities have released CCTV footage which they say shows Russian forces abducting the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. GB News cannot independently verify the video. However, it's reported he was kidnapped from the southeastern city, which has fallen under control of Vladimir Putin's forces. President Zelensky has accused Russia of violating international law. Russia has not commented on the video.
Today in Melitopol, the invaders captured the mayor of the city, a mayor who courageously defends Ukraine and the people of his community. Obviously, this is a sign of the weakness of the invaders. They did not find any support on our land, although they counted on it. Now, the Russian forces have switched to a new stage of terror when they are trying to physically eliminate representatives of the legitimate local Ukrainian authorities.
President Zelensky there. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russian forces are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mariupol are encircled and suffering heavy Russian shelling. President Zelensky has accused Russia of refusing to allow people out of Mariupol and says efforts will be made to deliver food and medicines there today. Health Secretary Sajid Javid told GB News that the UK is sending medical equipment to Ukraine.
We've been working very hard with our Ukrainian friends ever since the start of the conflict on humanitarian aid. So far, in terms of medical support, we've sent out 6 flights from the UK full of medical supplies and equipment and vital medicines and wound packages. We're coordinating also with our European friends to make sure that together we can provide everything that is needed.
Sajid Javid there. Boris Johnson will discuss Ukraine and the Northern Ireland Protocol during a meeting with the Irish Premier today. The leaders will meet before watching the Six Nations between Ireland and England at Twickenham. It comes after DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson said his party would not re-enter the Stormont executive until the government acts to protect Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom.
I gave the government notice that if they didn't act, I would take certain actions. And I gave them longer than I had intended because we had a pandemic, and I wanted to give the opportunity for the UK government to do the right thing. But the reality is the Prime Minister has not done the right thing. He has not acted to protect Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom.
New research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. Their analysis shows that gas and electricity bills are set to rise by 54% when the price cap changes in April. But average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. A government spokesperson said it recognised the strain that families were under, and that's why it's introducing a £21 billion package of support. The North East and North West of England are to receive more than £9 million each from the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. It's part of the government's £48 million levelling up drive to, quote, improve people's access to the arts and power economic growth through culture. 63 galleries, museums, libraries and other cultural venues across England will benefit from the support. OK, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to Saturday Selection.
This is the Saturday Selection here on GB News. I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis. Shall we start off with some GB views?
We certainly will. Go on.
Andy from Surrey says, in my opinion, it makes perfect sense to open up the North Sea oil and gas fields and start fracking now. And if we must, even coal. We have huge reserves of coal in this country.
And John from Manchester says on the shale protesters, just wondering how many of these anti-shale drilling protesters drive polluting cars. So your email's coming in thick and fast.
Now, coming up, we'll be back on the border between Poland and Ukraine for the very latest on the refugee crisis.
But first, Dia Chakravarti from the Daily Telegraph joins us once again to look at what has caught her eyes in today's papers.
I was looking through the papers, and one of the big issues that had dominated, well, actually, it was the big issue that was dominating before the Ukraine war was, of course, COVID, but also how authorities have handled the lockdown, for example, and all things related to the way we've changed our behaviour because of COVID. And one important story, I think, is in the papers today, where a group of women who took the Met Police to court because they were not allowed to organise a socially distant vigil for Sarah Everard. They have won their case against the Met Police yesterday. The High Court ruled against the Met Police, saying, I think quite damningly, that none of the decisions taken by the Met Police was in accordance with the law. And the evidence showed that there was no real assessment as to the proportionality of what they were suggesting. So from what I understand, the organisers were threatened with £10,000 fine each for organising it. So they didn't do it in the end. And to say nothing of the optics of it, I mean, it was one of their serving officers who was the murderer, but quite apart from that, it just seemed so heavy-handed. I mean, we all saw the impromptu vigil that then did take place, and how the police behaved there. It all seemed really disgraceful. So I think that in itself is a significant story, but I think this also opens up the debate about how many other authorities could have and should have acted differently during that period of lockdown or COVID combating as we were doing then. And I think we will start to see more stories coming out, and perhaps we will then learn the lesson. I mean, it's too late for those who have already suffered because of this. And I'm thinking of children as well who have suffered because of the lockdown and the social services not being there to look after them. And the Met Police's behaviour is in particular focus here. But I think now is the time to sort of look back and see what lessons really need to be learned, and learn fast from what happened over the last 2 years.
I think that's a good outcome. It doesn't really help. It's after the event, but I think it's reassuring to know that the courts are looking at it in that way, because I found it really chilling throughout the pandemic how easily people were frightened into giving up their freedoms, even the most basic of freedoms. Like my mum not being able to see her grandchildren and things like that, and so I'm hoping that kind of ruling will actually force a bit of a rethink in future.
Absolutely, and they knew this was about to happen. They knew there was going to be a vigil. They knew people wanted to come out and express their support, obviously, for Sarah, but obviously dislike of what had happened and what had the police done. And I thought it was handled so poorly from the very start. It needed clear messaging. Yes, you can come out. Yes, you're outdoors. Yes, you'll be socially distant. And this was a really important event and occurrence, and they got it for me, wrong from start to finish. So I'm pleased that that was the outcome there. Philip?
Well, the story I saw in the Times today was on page 31. It's an article by somebody called Sarah Dittam, and the headline is, "What is a woman? Don't try asking Labour." I found this quite bizarre, to be perfectly honest. It was International Women's Day earlier this week, and lots of, MPs of all parties are, all over International Women's Day debates and things like that, like a rash. But when they're asked, what is a woman? It seems it's an impossible question for lots of politicians to answer. Yvette Cooper and Annalise Dodds, both in the shadow cabinet, couldn't actually define what a woman was when they were asked. Yvette Cooper said she didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, and Annalise Dodds said it depended on the context. And then we've had the Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner, Lisa Townsend, who's been reprimanded officially reprimanded, democratically elected, reprimanded officially for sharing a J.K. Rowling tweet which suggested that biological male rapists are not females. And how can you be reprimanded for that? I mean, it seems to me that we've got ourselves into a right mess with this, around the country. The world's gone completely crackers. And, there are some people who think that, somebody who was born a man should be able to they could be playing sport, they should be able to self-identify as a woman and start participating in women's sport. There are people who think that somebody who's sent to prison as a man should be able to self-identify as a woman and be sent to a woman's prison. I mean, no doubt I'll get a lot of hate for this, but I think that's completely mad, all of that stuff.
But there is a problem if people who deal with the law and words and each meaning of the law cannot define a woman. And the reason I say that, you'll have like women's health issues, you've got the gender gap payments, you've got violence against crime, you've got people talking about should misogyny, hate of women be a crime? Well, if you can't define what a woman is, how are you either having oversight of laws with the name woman in there, or how are you actually going to bring through more laws? So oversight of them, bring them through. So it is a nonsense that we cannot define women, and if we can't, we need to come to a definition pretty quickly, because there are so many laws, rules, definitions that pertain to women. That's what is scary there.
Is it just me that doesn't understand this, dear?
I think you raise a very important point there. Particularly because with all the services that Esther was just mentioning, in reference with services which are particularly important to women, these are often there to serve vulnerable women. It's not even just any women, but these are particularly vulnerable women and girls who based on the research on that sort of, based on the research which we glean from understanding what a woman is, what a woman might need, and what is specific to women's needs. Those research then help for the society to service vulnerable people. And it seems to me that that is what we completely forget when we try and maybe virtue signal a little bit, if I'm allowed to say that. I don't want to be disrespectful to a lot of people who genuinely hold these views and are in genuine turmoil of, how to define a woman for whatever reason they are in that turmoil. But I think a lot of us actually also try and virtue signal and not come to a sort of a solid position, because we fear the attacks or the abuse or the vitriol we're going to get from taking a stance.
Well, we'd love to hear what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk on that particular issue. Esther, what did you see in the paper today?
Well, if we've got time for one more one, it was schools warned off sexting bans. Schools should not warn pupils against sending each other nude photos because it could encourage victim blaming. So what they're saying is you shouldn't put pressure on people not to send them, rather on how to resist the pressure. And I'm thinking, what a load of nonsense this is. You've got to tell it from both sides of the argument. You've got to say, don't do it, as well as supporting people, don't feel the pressure of doing it, to explain why you wouldn't do it, the consequences, the downside, as well as emboldening people not to feel the pressure to do it. So I thought this, again, was people dodging having to say, don't do something. This is what this is. And so I think you should be warning people, don't put it up, understanding why it's wrong sexting, as well as being able to resist the pressure. So I just thought that was an interesting little twist there, what schools were doing, because they didn't want sort of victim blaming.
I agree.
Time to thank Dia?
Yes. Dia, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you very much
today.
for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
So all week here on GB News, we've had our team of reporters and presenters at the Ukrainian border with its European neighbours as the exodus from the country continues.
Isabel Oakeshott is in Poland for us this morning. Isabel, what's been your experience so far of the refugee crisis at the front line?
Well, the numbers are reducing slightly, but we're still talking an enormous number of people coming over to Poland, some 100,000 people a day. And at the point where we have been, which is normally a city of 60,000 residents, there are about 25,000 coming over by the day, a slight reduction from the 30,000 yesterday, but still an enormous amount for that city to cope with. And earlier today we spoke to the deputy mayor of that city, which is very near the border with Ukraine, and he shared his thoughts about the challenges that they are facing and the help that they need there.
I do not know what the UK is doing. I'm here 15th day. I'm here 16 hours per day. We are tired. There is 1.5 million refugees that have already arrived in Poland. Some estimates predict that it may be a further 6 or 7, reaching up to 8 million people. Poland will not be able to cope with that number. So yes, we do need support. We do need help, and the UK should be one of those countries helping us.
Why is the process for...
So what I would...
Carry on, Isabel.
What I would say is that whilst the deputy mayor there is saying that they are concerned about coping, in fact, they are coping incredibly well. I'm standing now outside an enormous warehouse, a bit like, if you can imagine, an IKEA store, which has been converted into a temporary refugee centre. And there is a huge amount of food here, blankets, clothes, toiletries, medical aid. They have free Wi-Fi. It really is remarkably well organised and calm. I think one of the big concerns is actually moving these refugees on, because ironically, the circumstances that they are in here are, I don't want to say comfortable, because obviously it's a shocking situation, but it's very difficult to actually get them to make that leap from where they are in a place of safety and shelter to get on a bus, one of the many buses here, offering them transport to a whole new life, whether in Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands. Earlier we talked to somebody who had managed to fill a bus with 60 people going to Germany, and he had actually had to sort of go into the IKEA centre and sell his country to the refugees there, take a translator and explain to people why it would be good for them to get on his bus and prepare to have a new life in Germany. And he was really selling it to those refugees, saying you will have good accommodation, food, we will look after you, and you know, if you can't go home soon, then your children will be able to go to schools in Germany. And he had managed to fill the coach that he had brought. But there are other people going round with signs offering transport to other countries, and they are not actually being matched with refugees, because those refugees are understandably very focused on whether they can actually just go back to Ukraine soon. They've generally left husbands, brothers, parents, and they're not really thinking about setting up a new life. These are not economic migrants. They are fleeing for their lives, and many of them are hoping that they may be able to go back sooner rather than later.
Isabel, thank you so much for joining us from the front line in Poland.
Coming up, we're examining the cost of living crisis as prices keep going up and up.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Welcome back. There doesn't seem to be an end at the moment to the bad news for consumers. Fuel and food prices are going in the wrong direction as the cost of living continues to bite.
And with several tax rises due to hit next month, is it time for the government to do more to help? Financial expert and founder of the business networking service Regionally, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, is with us. Justin, it's a perfect storm for consumers at the moment, isn't it?
It is, it's an old phrase, but this time it's absolutely right. You know, we all had to go through a pandemic and all of that, so we're sort of familiar there. We knew there were inflationary pressures. But then add to that, then the issues we've had to do with commodities. This before the war hasn't even started yet. So you've got the issue over bad wheat harvests in Ukraine and Russia and America and Canada. And that's down to the weather, global warming. Take a choice. Either way, the amount is much lower, therefore price is already rising. Now, just add to that the horrors of this war as well, and of course, Ukraine is not going to be producing much in the way of wheat. Even if it does, it's about to lose its ports, it would seem, to actually export it anywhere. And this isn't just a European issue. They export to all over the world, and particularly to parts of Africa, which are dependent upon it. Therefore, you're going to see the threat of food shortages, and with food shortages, political instability, and people even worried about famine. And so, you can get awfully carried away with this. But it's a combination of elements. And for us in the UK, really what this means is it's not inflation now, it's inflation later in the year and next year because of this feeding through the system. And so that's higher levels of inflation. We're already looking at 7 to 8%. And we come from a generation, this generation hasn't seen higher inflation. Go back to the 70s, there was one year where we hit, for a very short period of time, 25%. And that's devastating for people who are at the wrong end of the income scale, the very poorest, because particularly with things like wheat, whether it's your pasta or bread and things like basic elements going up a lot. They're not going up by 5, 6%, they're going up by 10, 20, 30. One pasta I saw in a year was up by just about 80%. Okay, so it's pence, but nonetheless, it's still a high percentage. And of course, those who are retired possibly are living on an annuity. Maybe it's a fixed annuity, and maybe not linked to inflation. And so that's the real pain. So it now takes, I'm afraid, it's not just a matter of saying, oh, well, we can adjust something. No, we need some radical thinking here, just as we were dealing with the pandemic. And does that mean you're going to have to dip your hand in your pockets again to say, for the next year or so, whilst we go through this peak, do you have some form of pension furlough or something like that? I'm making that up as I go along. But to try and actually help people through it, because this is going to be extremely painful for a group of people.
So we're talking now about stagflation, the possibility of stagflation, where we have no growth in the economy, but inflation's ripping. I just wondered, obviously the Bank of England's job is to try and control inflation. The tool that they usually use is to put up interest rates to bring down inflation. Presumably in a period of stagflation where there's no growth and people are really struggling, putting up interest rates presumably would make the problem worse rather than better, because it would mean there'd be people that have even less money to spend.
It doesn't help because, interest rates were still close to zero anyway, because we were still on emergency rates from the banking crisis. And so all central banks want to put rates up, if only to allow them to cut them again when things start slowing down. And we're beginning to see that signs in America. We saw that V-shaped recovery beginning to roll over again. So there's relatively little that central banks can actually do with that. Now, the good news is, and I know Prime Minister...
We need some of that, don't we?
Well, there is Prime Minister May said there wasn't a money tree. Actually, well, there is a money tree, but of course it's producing, I say fake money, it's producing quantitative easing money. It's producing debt, which of course actually goes onto our government, on our national debt position. And you could do that for a while, but only for a while. Otherwise, eventually investors will turn around and say the emperor is somewhat sartorially challenged. We don't believe Britain can pay its way. So there is some flexibility there. But there's no magic issue to make this go away, I'm afraid. Stagflation, again, it's a creature of the 70s. It's very different from the 70s. You had a more unionised workforce who were much stronger. Now they don't have that sort of strength anymore. But nonetheless, people need to have more pay. But even the pay rises at 5%, if they're lucky, with inflation at 7 or 8%, you're still worse off.
And obviously it's the spring statement shortly. Rishi will be literally racking his brains as to what to do. He'll have said in 3 months we've gone from one massive crisis to another one. What are the tools at his disposal? People like me and Phil will be saying, what are you doing increasing national insurance contributions? What can you do about taxation? They've gone down the path of sort of a benefits, but we'd be saying get rid of tax. What would you be saying for the best way to tackle what we could be in stagflation?
Yeah, well, now it's time not to be increasing taxation. Now it's time actually you want to be able to encourage the economy to grow. How do you get more tax? More taxation? No. Grow the economy. The economy gets bigger, you earn more money out of it. It's a simple way of trying to do it. The good news with this, again, is we are remarkably entrepreneurial. We set up a lot of new businesses in this country. We have a lot of good growth businesses. We're absolutely useless at funding most of them, particularly outside London. So one of the issues I've been making about is not that you want regional stock exchanges again, but regional investment hubs so people can invest in regional businesses. Because if you just think it's anywhere between 500,000 and say 15, 20 million, where do you go to? The City of London can't help. You're too big to be small and too small to be big. Angels and things like that could help for a few 100,000, but you need some initiative. So why not, in the regions, actually have, in Liverpool and Manchester, speak to each other, you'll know more about than I, to actually create then regional investment hubs so that you can actually direct local money into those businesses rather than waiting for central government to do it, because they won't.
And today we've been talking about energy under our feet. Shale, why don't we do that? That would be a brand new industry in our regions that, would reduce energy prices, and if it doesn't, at least starts up an industry giving jobs and tax to the Exchequer. What do you think? Would that be a way forward?
I mean, the issue of shale was extremely controversial. People talking about earthquakes and things of such a minute level. I'm not an expert enough, but I would certainly be saying, look at this closer. Really tell me, at a time when we need more energy in the short term, is this going to be viable for us to do so? Or at least then see, is this something we should be investing in or encouraging other people to come and invest in it? America has, whether you agree with it or not, found itself in a position of being the largest producer Why? Because they went fracking mad. So they did reduce it a bit. I'm not suggesting we necessarily do the same, but there are opportunities there. The other thing is hope for some more wind. We're quite good at that.
Justin, thank you very much indeed for being with us again today. Still to come on Saturday Selection, we'll be taking a look at all the weekend sport. But first, here's the news headlines.
It's 11:32 a.m. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. US President Joe Biden has stressed that his country will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine, as it would be World War III. In a tweet, he said the United States would defend every inch of NATO territory, but a direct confrontation must be prevented. Meanwhile, a further 130 US soldiers have deployed to Europe to assist NATO allies and help deter Russian aggression. President Zelensky has demanded the immediate release of the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. It comes after Ukrainian authorities released CCTV footage which they say shows Russian forces abducting him. GB News cannot independently verify the video. However, it's reported he was kidnapped from the southeastern city, which has fallen under control of Vladimir Putin's forces. Russia has not commented on the footage. The Ukraine's Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russian forces are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mariupol are encircled and suffering heavy Russian shelling. President Zelensky has accused Russia of refusing to allow people out of Mariupol and says efforts will be made to deliver food and medicine there today. And here in the UK, new research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. Their analysis shows that gas and electricity bills are set to rise by 54% when the price cap changes in April. But average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. A government spokesperson said it recognised the strain families were under and is introducing a £21 billion package of support. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Saturday Selection.
Sports reporters who get involved in politics are usually told to stick to football. But this week there's little choice after the government effectively took control of world and European champions Chelsea after sanctioning the club's owner, Roman Abramovich. Join us in the studio is sports writer and broadcaster Aidan McGee. Aidan, what's the latest on the situation at Stamford Bridge?
Well, it hasn't really moved much, Philip, in the last sort of 24 hours or so. I mean, we know that Chelsea had some bank accounts frozen yesterday. Now, the difficulty with that is that that affects their ability to fulfil fixtures. We're not going to see much difference tomorrow when Newcastle play in town. I mean, apart from anything else, Chelsea have got 28,000 season ticket holders, and their payment or their entry into the ground is guaranteed. So beyond that, they've got Lille in the Champions League in midweek. That's been paid for. After that, it's about cash flow to get through the games. Now, I do strongly believe that, I mean, we chatted about it earlier on, we're probably in a little bit of disagreement about this, but I do think that this takeover will happen relatively quickly. I think there are so many interested parties, there could even be a bidding war, who knows? And so now that Roman Abramovich, according to Matt Law's story on the back of the Daily Telegraph, he's given the green light to the sale. He didn't really have much choice in the matter, but he's not going to dig his heels in or anything like that, as he could do, because he's technically still the owner of the club. And then you've got, what dovetails nicely with that is Matt Hughes and Matt Barlow's story on the back of the Daily Mail, which says that the government wants a quick Chelsea sale. So there's willingness on both sides to get this done. I don't think the government want to be responsible for harming the integrity of the Premier League by weakening Chelsea, because that's what's going to happen. The Premier League is one of our greatest exports. And also Chelsea, we have to remember, existed for, 98 years before Roman Abramovich got there. It's going to exist for a long time after that. Whatever your football allegiances are, we have to accept that this is a quintessential British institution. It needs to be given every chance to carry on and move forward.
I mean, are people trying to think they can pick up Chelsea on the cheap? You know, that it's a fire sale, that they could get a bargain. And you know, where does the money go to? If Roman Abramovich obviously can't grab the proceeds, so if anyone buys it, who sets the price, and where does the money go?
Well, the price will be dictated by the market. There are believed to be 10 interested parties. I think Nick Candy would have a good opportunity because he has the development experience and a big problem for Chelsea. It's the elephant in the room. It's hardly been mentioned in the last couple of days, which I find staggering. And that's the stadium. £1 billion. Roman Abramovich was committed to doing that. He pulled out in 2018 when he realised that it was being difficult. It was the government making it difficult for Russian people of interest or people of influence to come to Britain. And so he pulled away in the wake of the Salisbury poisonings, if you remember. So that's not been done. There's been no movement on that. Not a brick has been laid or a plan. And the planning applications now have expired and needs to be resubmitted. So a developer probably is in a good position. We all know how difficult it is to build a stadium in one of the most expensive postcodes in the world. So that needs to be crossed. I think that would put Nick Candy in a good position, but he's got 9 other rivals. Somebody else offers more money. The money was going to go to, well, we don't know where it's going to go. We think it's going to go to charitable causes. That's where Roman Abramovich said it would go. But it makes you wonder why the government didn't seize the club completely rather than freeze the assets. I think there might have been legalities around that.
The legal mind in with me is less optimistic than you that it will be a quick sale. I mean, I guess they'll want to because as part of the licence term, Chelsea cannot receive money for match tickets which have not already been sold.
No, that's
so
right.
we have a problem on money coming in. But can you imagine if you do purchase it, sort of in years to come, the legal challenges going forward? So you'll have to knock the price down, like you say, a fire sale, because somebody comes back and challenge, did you get it right? Where was the money held? Did you ever? I mean, to me, it is a wonderful sort of a problem for a whole host of lawyers and challenges down the line. So I don't see a fast sale.
I'm interested in your idea that the government should seize control of Chelsea and take over. I'd say Chelsea's got enough problems as it is without the government.
Possibly,
without the government running the club as well. I mean, my word.
They're open to accusations that why should the taxpayer pay the players' wages? Well, if the
Yes, that's right. 200,000 a week or whatever it is. 300,000 a week. I don't.
Can't hit
listen.
barn door, by the way.
Can I just say, when we're going through a cost of living crisis, when people will just be about to pay the food bills, I don't think we'll be picking up wages.
No, but I don't think the revenue streams would have been. Three wouldn't have pulled out if or the sponsorship or suspended their sponsorship agreement if the government had taken over. Nike, I don't think would even be thinking about. The revenue streams would cover the wages. Chelsea's in profit outside of COVID. Can I just refer to the
yes, so I've got
well?
I think you're right.
Quickly.
There's a great cartoon in the eye today, page 27. It's got a football commentator, and it says, it looks like Abramovich has lost the dressing room, as well as the stands, the gift shop, his mansion. It's a great...
Ben Jennings credit for that.
Great cartoon in the eye. Aidan, thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you.
Coming up, we're joined in the studio by Showbiz royalty. Don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Every week here on the Saturday Selection, we like to ask a well-known figure what they would do if they ruled the world.
Today, it's the turn of one of our best-loved celebrities, the star of stage and screen, Christopher Biggins, who's here with us in the studio. It's wonderful to see you. So, if you had the chance to rule the world for a day, what law would you bring in?
Well, it's easy because it's very topical at the moment, but I would certainly like, if I ruled the world, to help the refugees, which I think are treated appallingly by this country. I mean, I know Poland is very near Ukraine and they're on the border, but they've taken 1.5 million. And I think so far, I think it's 3 weeks or just over 3 weeks, we've taken 300. And to me, that seems absolutely disgusting. When you see on television, of course, nowadays television coverage is so cool in a way because you know exactly what you're seeing and what you're getting. I mean, I'm not sure they're showing it to the Russians, the TV coverage, but I mean, I think they have no idea what's going on, to be honest with you. But I think that it is so disgusting. It's cold, it's snowing, and they say, go online. Priti Patel says, go online. They probably don't have any access to going online. You know, these are people who are in terrible, terrible distress.
And I think what you're saying there, we've got to be inclusive, and I think we've got to act quickly and be nimble. I believe they are online, and we've been into Ukraine today, but I don't know if everybody is. So if they're not, what other things they can do? Maybe show the passport or what it is. And we were catching up with Isabel Oakeshott today, one of our reporters in Poland on the Ukraine border there, and talking about where do people want to go? How do we get them there? But absolutely, we've got to open our arms to people who are fleeing war-torn areas. Mums, children, grandparents.
I think the issue is, I've got a constituent of mine who's gone out to try and meet their relative who's fled Ukraine, and the process just seems so shambolic and slow. And, you know, she's actually gone out to Poland to get her and do all the stuff, and it's still a bureaucratic nightmare.
To my mind, there shouldn't be a process. It's just come.
Now, for the people who say, but don't you have to have some sort of checks who are coming into your country? What are you saying, when they reach the shores? So do you mean get them out of the dangerous area?
Exactly. And then treat them, you know, then check them.
Yeah.
And then see what they have, passports. And if they're not, they shouldn't be here, then we do something. But get them out. It is an appalling scenario that we're in. It's a war. And I've never seen anything like this because I wasn't born during the last war. But I mean, it is just appalling.
And I think what you say, the fact that you can see it real time, I find that quite chilling, actually, that it is there, it's happening. And sometimes it makes me feel really close to it. And then sometimes it's almost movie-like because you cannot believe you are seeing this real time.
Absolutely. And you know, the other day, the bombing of the maternity ward with the children and pregnant women. I mean, it's a wonderful story today in the paper about the woman who has given birth. But what's she given birth to? This child who is coming into this terrifying situation. I mean, it's appalling. I cannot believe that I am seeing, at the ripe old age of 73, this happening in our world.
And is there anything on a lighter note that you'd also want to do if you were in charge?
Yes, I think if I ruled the world, I'd like to live with David Beckham.
Well, there's a queue starting right here, Chris, and that's with me. You're behind the queue.
I think he's enchanting. I mean, I think he's... and I've met him and in the Ivy years ago, and he's a great fan of 2 TV series I did, Rent a Ghost and On Safari. And he's a lovely, lovely man. And I do think he's extremely attractive. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I hadn't, but now you mention it, Chris. Yes, he is. Obviously, I only have eyes for Philip.
Obviously.
But, you know, but otherwise, I might have cast a glance at it. Now, and I'll tell you something, because you've just made us laugh there. Look, I've known Chris for years and years, and everybody says there's no such thing as a party without Chris, right? Chris is the person that makes a party complete. And what I want to say, because it is at the moment, the whole world is in trauma in one way or another, and so many awful things are happening. But how important is laughter? How important is seeing, I don't know, comedy and dark side, and to give people hope in a way?
Well, comedy is terribly important. I mean, you know, if you don't laugh, even in the situation we're in now, you have to laugh, or else you just, I don't know, you'd go mad. And, you know, we do laugh, thank goodness. I mean, you know, I have friends that I laugh with nearly every day after we've dealt with the seriousness going around with this. But it is terribly important, and it's a great tonic. You know, it gives you an uplift to laugh. I mean, it's marvellous.
Chris, I was looking through all the shows that you've been in, and I was going to read them out. I actually thought it'd be quicker to read out the shows you haven't been in, to be perfectly honest, because your list of, you know, things that you've been in, Poldark, I, Claudius, Minder, Rent a Ghost you mentioned, Surprise, Surprise, some others to have them. Now, my favourite character of yours, I loved Porridge.
Oh, yes.
And Lukewarm in Porridge was one of my favourite. What was your favourite character that you played in that whole list of things that you...
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I have had such a wonderful, varied career, and I've done some marvellous things. Some of the things I'm really proud of, like, for instance, I, Claudius.
Now, that's my favourite. I love that.
You played Nero in that.
I played Nero.
Unbelievable.
And I was bloody good. And that led to me playing the sex-crazed vicar in Poldark. I got the offer the following day. So it's been marvellous. But, you know, the thing that I really am so proud of, the thing that I absolutely adore doing and love the reaction was I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which may amaze you, but I think to win it, being voted by the public, was fantastic. So that was a great moment for me.
Well, what do you think that was? I mean, was it like real-life theatre? I mean, were you thinking what you had to do? I mean, obviously, all those awful things that you had to do, those challenges. But what was so great about it? Watching at home, I'm thinking, thank God he's there and not me.
Well, I think it was the challenge, you know, and being able to do the challenge of eating kangaroos' penises and things like that, and doing some of the physical things as well. I mean, it was just wonderful. It was a marvellous atmosphere. I mean, thank goodness I went to Australia as opposed to going to Wales, which I've got nothing against Wales. But Wales is not quite Australia. And the weather, I mean, I don't think I could have done it in...
It was blown away, wasn't it, in Wales?
Yes, it was terrible this year. I mean the weather. But I loved doing it. Ant and Dec are just marvellous. It was a great experience. And, you know, I took it by two hands and just loved it.
And you know what? We've got our Showbiz reporter here.
Yes, I met her earlier.
Yes.
Our other Showbiz royalty. It's not just you.
I know.
Showbiz royalty today.
Yeah, Hayley Palmer. So we're all going to stay in because I think, you know, Chris has no doubt can add in to what you're talking about, and Chris will know probably everybody you're talking about as well, and he can probably tell you behind the scenes what goes on and what they're like, really. Yes. So, Hayley.
Yes, well, it's BAFTA time of year. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock at the Royal Albert Hall. You going, Chris?
I'm not, actually. No.
Well, that's a shock.
I know. I think I've just come back from holiday, so I just...
But he's otherwise there, and the parties afterwards, because I've seen
after
him.
Party, I'll see you there
as well.
So, yes, tomorrow evening, I mean, June, Power of the Dog and Belfast have the most nominations, so they're the ones to look out for. I'm really hoping Belfast wins Best Film.
Yes, we saw Power of the Dog, and I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he's magnificent. I watched it for him. But the film itself, to me, was a bit slow.
Strange. We thought it was a bit strange.
Yeah, slow is a word.
Yes.
Slow.
So, and good news that Dame Shirley Bassey is opening the show.
Yeah, well, she's fantastic news. I mean, she's a good friend of mine. I love her to death. And it's a real coup to get her because she's not been doing anything. She's been staying at home. I think she's been frightened of COVID. She's a great age. I probably hate me for saying that, but she is wonderful, and I think it's such a brilliant tribute to the Bond movies that she's coming back to sing. Is it announced what song she's singing?
It hasn't been announced yet.
You're not going to tell us, or you break the curfew and let us know?
I would have thought Goldfinger would have been a wonderful one to do. I mean, I think she's very famous for doing that, but she's brilliant and a wonderful, wonderful character and a marvellous singer.
Absolutely.
And there's a special little girl who's going to the BAFTAs.
Oh yeah, there's a little girl. She was 9 years old, and she wrote to Disney, and she always wore glasses. And she said there aren't any Disney princesses that wear glasses. So there's actually a new character called Mirabelle, and Disney wrote to the little girl and said, well, we've got a new character, and also, would you like to attend the BAFTAs on Sunday evening? So I'm thrilled for this little girl.
That's
I think it's such a nice story.
Chris, you've put glasses on the airwaves for everybody. You're a big glasser. You could have written into Disney. You could have got that invite.
I did write to Disney. And they said, I can't tell you what they said. No. I tell you, at one particular point, when I was very heavily into glasses, I had 857 pairs of glasses.
Oh, my word.
I had them in drawers.
To have a new house just for your glasses.
Well, I mean, listen, it was ridiculous because people used to send them to me. And I had every colour. And I would rush out of the house some mornings, you know, to go to rehearsals or something, and realise as I was in the car looking in the mirror that I was clashing terribly with whatever I was wearing because I didn't think about what colour they were. But I did have every colour, but I did get rid of them. And I have now about... These I love. These are new.
Oh.
And they're very good. I've got 2 girls down in Sussex who do my glasses.
But down from 800 and whatever it was to just a couple.
Yeah, no, I think I got about 20 pairs.
No, that's
yeah.
Now, the news I was sad about this week was the death of Linda Barron, who played Nurse Gladys Emanuel in Open All Hours. Open All Hours was one of my favourite programmes.
Yeah, she was so well loved, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. She was a great actress.
Yes.
And a lovely character. She has a daughter who was a lovely girl who I think's moved back to this country. She moved abroad. She was fantastic.
Yeah, 82
really
years
good.
old, so...
Fending off Ronnie Barker
82.
as... Oh, yeah. 82, yeah. Fending off Ronnie Barker as Arkwright all the time.
I know.
And it's very special to me because the person who wrote Open All Hours and Last of the Summer Wine and Keeping Up Appearances is a chap called Roy Clark, and he actually lives in the same village as my mum, and with the village where I was born and brought up. He wrote it, so it's always had a special place in my heart. But I loved Open All Hours, and I loved Linda Barron and Nurse Gladys. And,
and everybody knows in the village who each of the characters are. Let's put it this way.
I'm not getting into that.
It wasn't complete fiction. He drew his inspiration of the people who lived in the village.
And then just finally, about Ed Sheeran and his court case.
He's in a court case all this week. So he has a song, as you know, Shape of You, a big selling single in 2017. And there's a song called OY, and they're saying the hook of Shape of You, where it says OI, is similar to the OY. I mean, I think so many songs sound the same, don't you, when you listen on the radio? So, I mean, he had a musicologist that said that it wasn't too similar. So this court case is going on for a couple of weeks. So we'll have to watch this space, but...
I'm a bit confused. What does OI mean?
I won't sing it to you, Chris, but in the song it goes...
Go on, Hayley.
I'm tone deaf. But there's a bit in the song where it's OI, OI, and they're saying it sounds similar to the OY.
And what is OY?
OY is a different song.
And they're saying he's copied it.
Yeah.
The only thing I will say, a good friend, and he'll be a good friend of yours, Sir Tim Rice, always said, where there's a hit, there's a writ. And if you do have a hit, people will always come forward. So he would have his own sort of legal team. And if there was no way that he could have copied a record that was done the other side of the world, he said invariably, you know, they would put a writ on you and you'd invariably have to pay out. So he just said that, where there's a writ. So be expecting these court cases is what I'm saying.
George Harrison fell foul of this, didn't he? He wrote a song, My Sweet Lord. And
That's right.
And it was supposedly very similar to the Chiffons, He's So Fine.
Yes.
And he had the judge, it went to court, the judge ruled against George Harrison, but said that he'd done it subconsciously, is what the judge ruled, but he still had to pay out.
Also, that's one of my favourite songs, My Sweet Lord.
Is it?
I think, and I don't think it's anything like the other one. It's fantastic.
I've just ruined it for you now.
Well, look, Hayley, fantastic for you to be with us again doing our Showbiz
especially with Christopher Biggins as well.
Christopher Biggins making it top Showbiz. So look, that's all from us. We will be back next week, 10 o'clock. Next, obviously, is Alistair Stewart and Friends, so stay with us.
Hello. It's looking rather unsettled across the UK through this weekend, with showers or longer spells of rain. There will still be some sunshine in between, but it will often be windy, particularly through this evening, overnight into Sunday. So we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see the first frontal system has cleared its way to the north. That's what brought the rain on Friday. Behind it, a brief respite, but that's ahead of the next low pressure system that's winding its way up to push in from the Atlantic, bringing more wet and windy weather. So we look at the picture then for the first thing on Saturday morning then, quite cloudy with showery outbreaks of rain affecting many northern parts, but actually improving for a time across Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales, with more in the way of sunshine, but still a few showers that could be on the heavy side. For many parts, winds will compared to Friday as well. So I think in that sunshine towards the south, highs of 12 or 13 degrees will feel quite mild, highs of 8 to 10 degrees further towards the north. But already by the early part of the afternoon, we're seeing heavy rain and strong winds spreading into the southwest of England. We do have a warning in force of that. We could see gusts up to 60 miles an hour, and all that heavy rain will sweep its way northwards and eastwards as we head through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight. So by the end of the night, most places seeing some outbreaks of rain. But it's the strength of the wind we do need to keep the closest eye on. As we see this low pressure pushing in from the Atlantic, we see some particularly strong winds across western coastal areas. Again, 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts possible in exposure, turning windier elsewhere as well. So we get off to a rather cloudy start on Sunday morning once again. Outbreaks of rain across the central slice of the UK. A bit of dry, brighter weather either side, but already there's a rash of showers affecting much of Northern Ireland, western parts of Wales and England. And again, these could be heavy with the risk of hail and thunder. And we've still got those strong winds across the country with further warnings in force across many western areas. Despite the cloud, wind and rain though, it will stay on the mild side. So after an unsettled day to come on Sunday, it will gradually settle down though as we head into the early part of next week. We'll see more in the way of dry, brighter weather, more in the way of sunshine, and thanks to that sunshine, temperatures should respond as well. So we could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day,